Hi, today I finally test Wi-Fi 7. EnGenius sent their ECW520, which is a 2x2x2 configuration. So you have 6 antenna, 2 for 6 GHz, which is Wi-Fi 7, 2 for 5 GHz, and 2 for the 2.4 GHz. It's also an EnGenius Cloud only product. You can check my previous video if you want more detail about EnGenius Cloud. I review a gateway. Of course, it supports technology like mesh, beamforming, and MIMO. It can do client balancing and automatic channel selection. The access points support up to 500 connection for device, but of course that would be a little tough to test. And they say you can get around 1250 square feet of coverage if you're in an office environment. Of course, I only have one, but you could have many to cover your full house or office building. The access point has a 2.5 gig port that support PoE, so power over Ethernet. You can also plug an AC adapter to it to power it. It's what I did here to see if it would generate less heat to the gateway. The power adapter doesn't come in the box, so I just found an old power adapter for a hard drive that supports 12 volt and 2 amp, which is the recommended setting in the documentation. Of course, it's just an access point, so you'll need some kind of gateway or router to connect to it. EnGenius sent me a gateway and I reviewed it previously, so you can check the video for that. It sells for $274.99 Canadian on their website. I received the access point as a review unit, but I'm not compensated for the video and they have no control on what I'm gonna say. I end up mounting it straight under my desk. If you ask why, it's because I'm in a loft setting and all the devices I mostly want connected to the Wi-Fi network are downstairs. So this way it points straight downstairs next to the banister. Of course, I could mount it in the ceiling, but the ceiling is super high and I plan to move in the next couple months. So it doesn't seem to go in the trouble to mount it. Also, when I was talking to a friend that is a network engineer, we were talking about orientation and it said you can put it like that, pointing up or pointing down, but this way is the worst way, except if you put it in one corner of, let's say, your room, and then it go all in the direction where are your device. So for me, it made more sense to have it point downward this way, so it could like hit all the devices that are downstairs. But of course, because it's a loft setting and you have the ceiling blocking part of the apartment, it's going to be interesting to see if I go at the other end on the first floor, if I'm able to get good coverage bouncing over the wall. So let's review it. I did get some Cat 7 cables. I had some old cable and I was getting like disconnection, so I just figured out like if we were doing the network, let's get some new cable. But they're not a necessity. Let's do a quick unboxing first. It's an indoor access point, and it's a cloud enable and only device. It's a 2x2x2 configuration, so 2 antenna for 2.4, 2 antenna for 5 GHz, and 2 antenna for 6 GHz, which is Wi-Fi 7. You get the QR code for the quick start and for the mobile app. I would mostly focus on the website versus the mobile app, but I tested both. You can see the access point here. You have a QR code at the back to scan the device and add it automatically, or you can use the serial and add it straight to the EnGenius Cloud. You have a reset button, the 2.5 gig port that support PoE, and a plug if you want to use a power adapter. You have gear to mount it to the ceiling or to a wall. I decided to mount it under my desk, which is next to the banister and the open area of the loft. Also find a 12 volt 2 ampere
hard drive power adapter, so I can use that. I was curious if by not using the PoE, the fan would kick in less often on the gateway. At the beginning, I put it on the floor, facing down because I want the Wi-Fi to go to the device that are downstairs, just for testing. I did try with the PoE port just to see if it would be more useful to remove a wired. You can see here different configuration they suggest. Mine is even simpler. I only have the gateway, the access point, and the router of my ISP. You can see a better view of the device here. Okay, let's talk a little Wi-Fi 7. It's gonna use the 6 gig bandwidth. The access points support MIMO, beamforming. The client balancing and automatic channel selection is important. We'll see if the device seems by default to adapt its behavior to the environment. They say 1250 square feet and up to 500 device, but that would be very complicated to test. You can not really simulate that easily, at least from my knowledge. I'm not a network admin. It's interesting versus Wi-Fi 6 and 6E, which the max bandwidth was 9.6 gigs. Now it's a max of 46 gig. And EnGenius has a bunch of different AP with different speed and config, like a 4x4x4 with a 10 gig connection, depending if you need. You can set table here with a bunch of different options. Not really going to spend a lot of time on this table, but I think it's useful if you know what you exactly need. The AP is available for $274 Canadian on their website. It's the only way I think you can order it for now, at least in Canada. You can see here how you could configure it differently if you have many AP. It's always interesting to see all the AP connect to each other and talk to each other. But right now the setting is quite simple with only one, and it's a 1 bedroom office and apartment, so that's totally gonna be fine. Okay, enough talking about spec. You can see here that like after I add the serial number or scan the QR code that the AP is detected, then I did updating. So it updated to the last firmware, and now the AP is available for me to use. You can see some spec of the AP here, and I already created one SID, the guest network called FF13, because I wanted to continue being connected wirelessly instead of using the wired connection through the gateway. You can see here some of the stats that are available through the graph. Then the next step would be to create all or wireless networking. You can see more information here and what is available. I think it can be overwhelming for someone that doesn't know what you're looking for. But I respect this level of control on the settings you can have. Now you can see the setting if you want to see the summary of like the IP tables and things like that for the DHCP of the access point. You can also add a picture and comments. It's super useful if you have different site and you want to take a picture of the IIP or how it's connected. We do that sometime for server room and some of our building at my day job. So if a new technician get in, you can look at the picture how it's supposed to look like. You can see here the status of the AP and that everything is working normally. You could see here the network activity. So it's super detailed what kind of information you can get. And you can see here the channel utilization map. And here you can see the indoor or outdoor settings. And you can change the channel You can put a client limit on the bandwidth, and you can like have your power limit. So it's super useful to be able to configure that this way. So now we need to create some SSID. So here you can name your SSID, you can enable it, which radio band you're gonna use, and you have a lot of options for security if you're gonna use a WP83 Enterprise. Here we're just gonna use a password. I also appreciate that it generates a QR code for the password, so you can save that code and give it to people to join. I left by default WPA personal, but I add to also enable WPA2 PSK for my Xbox Series X. That was the only way I could connect to the network. And yes, the QR code is visible right now, but those networks won't exist anymore when the video is published. So I decided you can have a SSID with, let's say, 5 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz. But because you can create a max of 8 SSID, I decided to have one 6 gigahertz, one 5 gigahertz, one 2.4, and one 5 gigahertz for guests, where you have L2 isolation so they cannot communicate with the wired device. So now you can see that I have my 4 networks available and created. It's possible I do a third video with more advanced setting and testing, but for now, let's just do a speed test and wrap it up. You could see here the top application consuming bandwidth. It's super useful, especially if you want to limit some application or OS. You can see that everything is okay right now. I remember seeing a message about a channel interference eventually when I was looking through the dashboard, but it seems to correct itself. So I started doing a speed test on the 6 gigahertz network, but with a Wi-Fi 6 device, and you can see here that I get 758 Mbps. Then I switched to the 5 gigahertz network, and I got to 703 Mbps. Then I switched to the 2.4, and you can see it dropping to 45 Mbps. I did a test a couple of times and using different speed tests and server location, and that speed was constant. You could see here that I was getting a message with my MacBook telling me that it's a 6 gigahertz network, but I'm using like a laptop that is supporting only Wi-Fi 6. The speed was good and everything was working fine too, so I ignored the message. For most of those tests, I was maybe 7 to 10 feet under the access point. Then I used my Snapdragon laptop, which is Wi-Fi 7 enabled for the wireless, and you can see I get 921 Mbps. And here you can see that if I use the wired connection, I get to 938. So I'm basically using all my bandwidth because it's around the max I'm getting with this cable connection. So the performance are quite solid, but of course it's a small apartment.
So what do I think of the EnGenius ECW520 Access Point? Well, there's a lot to like there. You get access to Wi-Fi 7 for 189 USD or 275 Canadian. The 2x2x2 antenna setting is perfect for the open loft that I am right now. I was getting speed that are close to the max speed in my wired connection when I was maybe 3 feet from the access point. This access point has a 2.5 gig port on it, but they do have like a more expensive model with a 10 gig port and a 4x4x4 configuration. It also merged perfectly with the EnGenius gateway that I reviewed previously. You just scan the QR code or type the serial number of the access point in the EnGenius website or using your phone app, and the IP will update itself and will be available right away. You have more advanced feature and the interface is super well done, but you have to expect that it's going to be more complicated than a home router. I think EnGenius did a great job simplifying the interface for a newcomer, but the advanced feature are still there if you dig in. Like I was saying previously, the 190 USD dollars or the 274.99 Canadian give you access to advanced feature and it's affordable. At that price, you get access to advanced feature set that are like enterprise-like. The main competition is going to be the U7 Pro, which sell for 239 on Unify website. I suspect a lot more people are aware of them because of all the LTT video with Jake that was previously there. They're also available at Canada Computers, which doesn't seem to be the case for EnGenius. The cloud-only nature of the device will maybe be a negative for some power user. It worked pretty well. It's easy to set up, and having access anywhere in the world to your infrastructure has its own threat. But I'm also the kind of guy that doesn't have his NAS visible over the web, and same thing for his game console. But I never really felt that they were pushing the subscription. Most of the features are there and easily accessible. The only time I was annoyed with it was when it was for like saving the configuration of the gateway. That was an advanced feature. So hopefully it will stay that way and you won't hit the paywall easily. Now for the general public, things are a little more complicated. You will have a majority of people that will be just happy to use their ISP modem for Wi-Fi also. Now a more advanced user won't trust their ISP and will want to have control over their own firewall and security. So people will have a home router. But often those devices are not updated that often, and after 1 or 2 years, often there's not even more security update for them. So I think if people look, like at Best Buy, Micro Center, or Can I Get a Computer in Canada, and just see a bunch of Wi-Fi 7 router, they'll probably go in that direction. You need to be a power user or not be intimidated by networking to say like, well, I want better coverage and faster speed. Maybe I want an access point on every floor of my house. So if you're that kind of user, I think this EnGenius access point could be a good entry point to enterprise-like level of feature and speed. Thanks for watching.